In 1716, France was bankrupt. King Louis XIV had just died after 72 years of wars, palaces, and spending. He left behind the most beautiful country in Europe, and debt so massive it could never be repaid. The French treasury was empty. Tax revenues went entirely to interest payments. The government couldn't borrow more. No one would lend to them. France was in a death spiral. Then a Scottish gambler showed up with a radical idea. His name was John Law. He'd been exiled from Britain for killing a man in a duel over a woman. He'd spent 20 years gambling across Europe, studying mathematics and economics, and he told the regent of France, "I can fix everything with paper money." This was 1716. Paper money barely existed in Europe. It was exotic, untested. Most people had never seen it. But John Law was convincing, charismatic. He had theories about how paper currency could create prosperity from nothing. He promised to eliminate France's debt, restart the economy, and make France the richest nation on earth. All he needed was permission to experiment. The regent, desperate with no other options, said yes. Within 4 years, Law had created France's first central bank, issued the country's first paper currency, and launched the most spectacular stock bubble in history. For a brief moment, it looked like magic. People were becoming millionaires overnight. The word millionaire was invented in 1720 to describe people getting rich from Law's system. Then it collapsed, catastrophically. Riots in the streets, deaths, economic devastation so complete that France banned paper money for 80 years. The trauma was so severe that when the French Revolution came in 1789, one of the triggers was the government trying, once again, to issue paper money. The Mississippi bubble is less famous than the South Sea bubble, which happened the same year in Britain, but it was more extreme, more disastrous, more consequential. This is the story of how a Scottish gambler convinced France to bet their entire economy on an untested financial innovation and how it destroyed them. Because John Law proved something important. You can create money out of nothing, but you can't create wealth out of nothing. And when people discover the difference, the system collapses. Let's start with just how desperate France was in 1716. Louis XIV, the Sun King, had ruled France for 72 years. He'd built Versailles, fought constant wars, maintained the most lavish court in Europe. It was expensive. Catastrophically expensive. By 1715, France's national debt was 3 billion livres. The entire annual tax revenue was 145 million livres. And 100 million of that went just to interest payments. Do the math. France was paying 69% of tax revenue just on interest, leaving 45 million livres for everything else. The military, the administration, the court, everything. It was unsustainable. France couldn't pay its debts, couldn't reduce spending, couldn't raise taxes. The peasants were already overtaxed and rebellious. Law had spent 20 years thinking about money. He'd published a book in 1705, Money and Trade Considered, his central argument. Money shouldn't be scarce precious metal. It should be abundant paper, backed by land and economic activity. His theory was actually sophisticated. He argued that Europe's problem was insufficient money supply, that gold and silver were too scarce to support growing economies, that paper money, properly managed, could stimulate trade and create prosperity. He wasn't completely wrong. Modern economies do run on fiat currency. Paper money is the norm now, but Law made a fatal assumption that he could control it, that his system wouldn't be abused, that human greed wouldn't corrupt it. The regent, Philippe II, Duke of Orleans, was intrigued. He was ruling France as regent for the child king, Louis XV. He desperately needed a solution to the debt crisis. In 1716, he gave John Law permission to establish a private bank, the Banque Générale. Law's bank could issue paper notes backed by silver. The notes were innovative. They promised to pay a fixed amount of silver, regardless of currency debasement. This made them more reliable than coins, which kings routinely debased. Merchants loved them. Paper was easier to carry than silver, and Law's notes held their value. The bank was a success. So in 1718, Law convinced the regent to go bigger, nationalize the bank, turn it into the Banque Royale, France's first central bank, and give Law something else, a monopoly company to develop France's Louisiana territory in America. This was the Mississippi Company, and this is where things got interesting. Here's Law's genius and his trap. He created a company, the Mississippi Company, with monopoly rights to develop French Louisiana. This was a huge territory, basically the entire middle of North America from Canada to the Gulf of Mexico. Law promised this land was filled with gold, silver, profitable trade. It wasn't. Louisiana was mostly swamp and wilderness, but nobody in Paris knew that. Law sold shares in the Mississippi Company. But here's the trick. He allowed people to buy shares using French government debt. Remember, France had 3 billion livres in debt that everyone thought was worthless. Law said, trade your worthless government bonds for shares in my company. People did. Why not? Government bonds were worth maybe 20–30% of face value. Mississippi Company shares were exciting, new, backed by tales of American riches. As people bought shares, Law's company acquired massive amounts of French government debt. Law then used his position controlling the bank Royale to pay off that debt with newly printed paper money. It was brilliant financial engineering. Law was converting France's unpayable debt into equity in his company and printing money to pay it off. At first it worked. The debt decreased. The economy improved. People had more money to spend. Trade increased. And the Mississippi Company stock price rose from 500 livres per share in 709 to 1,000, then 2,000, then 5,000, then 10,000. People were making fortunes on paper. A share bought at 500 was worth 10,000 within months. 20x returns. Speculation mania began. People quit their jobs to trade Mississippi Company stock full-time. The street where Law's bank was located, Rue Quincampoix, became an open-air stock exchange. Thousands of people packed the narrow street, buying and selling shares, shouting prices. Fortunes were made in hours. A servant who bought a few shares became wealthy. A hunchback man rented his back as a writing desk for traders, earned enough in a day to retire. The word millionaire was invented in 1720 to describe people getting rich from Mississippi Company stock. Before this, nobody needed a word for someone with 1,000,000 livres. It was unthinkable wealth. Now there were hundreds of millionaires, maybe thousands. Law himself became the richest man in France. The regent showered him with honors, made him Controller General of Finances, essentially running the French economy. From exiled Scottish gambler to running France's economy in 4 years. And everyone believed, because the stock price kept rising, because people were getting rich, because Law's theories seemed to be working. By early 1720, Mississippi Company stock hit 10,000 livres per share. The entire company, on paper, was worth 6 billion livres, more than France's GDP, for a company that owned swampland in America and had never turned a profit. The problem with bubbles is that someone eventually wants to convert paper wealth into real wealth. In early 1720s, some smart speculators started cashing out. They sold their Mississippi Company shares and demanded gold or silver in exchange for Law's paper money. Law's bank had to pay, but the bank didn't have enough gold and silver to back all the paper money in circulation. Because Law had printed way more paper than he had metal, more people noticed. More people wanted to convert paper to metal. A bank run began. Law panicked. He did what every government does when facing a bank run. He changed the rules. First, he limited how much gold or silver people could withdraw. Didn't work. People got more suspicious. Then he banned the ownership of gold and silver above small amounts. Made it illegal to have precious metals. Didn't work. People hid their gold. Then, in desperation, he devalued the currency. He declared that Mississippi Company shares and paper money were worth less than their face value. A 50% devaluation. This was the moment everyone realized. Law's paper money wasn't actually backed by anything real. It was just paper, and Law could change its value whenever he wanted. The panic became a stampede. By May 1720, riots broke out. Crowds mobbed the bank. People were crushed in the crowds trying to exchange paper for metal. Multiple people died. The Rue Quincampoix, where people had become millionaires, months before became a scene of rage and desperation. Former millionaires now holding worthless paper. Mississippi Company shares collapsed from 10,000 livres to 1,000, then 500, then 200. Everyone who had bought at the top, and many had borrowed money to do so, was ruined. The French economy seized up. The paper money Law had printed was worthless. Trade stopped. Credit vanished. Businesses failed. And France's debt? It was back. Law had temporarily converted it into equity. But with the equity worthless, the debt returned. Plus now, there was also worthless paper money floating around causing inflation. France was in worse shape than before Law arrived. By December 1720, Law fled France in disguise. He left behind economic devastation and died in poverty in Venice 9 years later. The Mississippi bubble didn't just crash. It traumatized France for generations. The immediate damage was catastrophic. Thousands of families were financially destroyed. People who had been wealthy on paper were suddenly destitute. Life savings evaporated, but the deeper damage was psychological and political. France learned a lesson. Paper money is dangerous. It's a trick, a scam. something that lets governments steal from citizens by printing. In 1720, France banned paper money, not temporarily, for 80 years. Until 1800, France operated entirely on metal currency, gold, silver, copper, despite massive inconveniences, despite the growing economy needing more currency, despite other countries successfully using paper. France said no. The trauma was too deep, but the problems that caused the Mississippi Bubble didn't go away. France's debt didn't go away. The government's inability to raise revenue didn't go away. By the 1780s, France faced another financial crisis. King Louis XVI needed money. His finance ministers proposed solutions. One solution: paper money. Issue assignats, paper currency backed by confiscated church lands. The proposal triggered massive political opposition. Citizens remembered 1720. They remembered worthless paper. They remembered John Law. But the government issued assignats anyway in 1789 because they were desperate, just like in 1716. And guess what happened? The same thing: overprinting, inflation, worthlessness. By 1796, assignats were worthless. The failure of assignats contributed to the chaos of the French Revolution. People's savings wiped out, again, by paper money. Again, the Mississippi Bubble echoed through French history for a century. Historians argue it's one reason France was slower to industrialize than Britain. Britain had a functioning paper money system and sophisticated credit markets. France, traumatized by law, relied on metal currency and was more financially primitive. France paid a long-term economic price for Law's experiment. And globally, the Mississippi Bubble became a cautionary tale. When governments proposed paper money, critics would say, "Remember France. Remember John Law." It took until the 20th century for paper money to become truly mainstream, and even then it required careful management, independent central banks, and hard-learned lessons. John Law wasn't completely wrong. His theory that paper money could be beneficial was correct. Modern economies run on fiat currency, but he failed to understand, or chose to ignore, that paper money requires discipline, restraint, independence from political pressure, mechanisms to prevent overprinting. Law printed money to pay France's debts, to inflate asset prices, to create the appearance of prosperity. And it worked, until it didn't, until people lost faith, until they wanted real wealth, not paper promises. That's the moment every fiat currency system fears, the moment confidence breaks. And once confidence breaks, it's almost impossible to restore. So why does the Mississippi Bubble matter today? Because this time is different is the most expensive phrase in finance. John Law believed his system was different, that he'd figured out how to make paper money work, that his theories were sound, that he could control it. He was smarter than previous finance ministers, more sophisticated. He had mathematical models, and he was wrong. The same pattern repeats throughout history. 1720, Mississippi Bubble and South Sea. Bubble, paper money and stock bubbles. 1929, stock market crash, buying stocks on margin. 2000, dot-com bubble, internet changes everything. 2008, subprime mortgage crisis, housing always goes up. 2022, crypto crash, decentralized finance is the future. Every time, smart people believe this time is different, that they've found a new paradigm, that old rules don't apply. And every time, human nature, greed, fear, herd behavior creates the same patterns. Asset prices rise beyond rational value. People leverage themselves. Everyone believes they'll sell before the crash. Then something breaks confidence, and the collapse is rapid and brutal. The Mississippi Bubble is the template. John Law pioneered the pattern. 1. A genuine innovation, paper money, which is legitimate. 2. Initial success. People get rich, economy improves. 3. Euphoria. Everyone believes it will continue forever. 4. Overextension, printing too much, speculation replacing investment. 5. Loss of confidence, someone wants real value, not paper. 6. Collapse, rapid, devastating, contagious. This pattern is so reliable that economists have names for it. Bubble dynamics, Minsky moments, irrational exuberance. But knowing the pattern doesn't prevent it, because during the bubble, everyone believes this time is different. In 1720, people believed American gold made Mississippi Company valuable. In 1929, people believed stocks had reached a permanently high plateau. In 2000, people believed internet companies didn't need profits. In 2008, people believed housing prices couldn't fall nationally. In 2021, people believed crypto would replace fiat currency. Each time, there's a narrative, a story that makes the bubble seem rational. And smart people believe it until they don't. The question we should ask about any financial innovation: what's the mechanism that prevents overuse? What stops human greed from corrupting it? John Law's paper money had no mechanism. He could print unlimited amounts. Nothing stopped him except his own restraint. And when he faced political pressure to print more, he did. Modern fiat currencies have mechanisms: independent central banks, inflation targets, transparency requirements. Not perfect, but better than John Law had. Cryptocurrencies claim to have mechanisms: fixed supply, decentralized control. But they have different problems: wild volatility, no backing, susceptibility to manipulation. Every system has weaknesses. The question is whether the benefits outweigh the risks. John Law's system had genuine benefits. Paper money is more efficient than metal. But the risks, inflation, loss of confidence, political abuse, proved greater. And France paid the price for 80 years. The Mississippi Bubble teaches us to be skeptical of financial innovations, promising revolutionary prosperity, to ask hard questions about mechanisms and incentives, to remember that human nature doesn't change. Greed, fear, and herd behavior are constants. Any system that doesn't account for them will fail. John Law was brilliant, charismatic, mathematically sophisticated. He had genuine insights about money, and he destroyed France's economy, not because he was stupid or evil, but because he believed his system was different, that he could control it, that it wouldn't be corrupted. He was wrong. And when people today say, this time is different about crypto, or AI, or the next financial innovation, we should remember John Law, standing in the ruins of France's economy, having fled the country in disguise, having created and destroyed fortunes, proving that some lessons have to be relearned. Every generation, at great cost, because confidence is everything, and confidence is fragile, and once it breaks, all the paper money in the world can't buy it back.